Welcome to video 2, chapter 9. Got a special guest tonight. I have SNL, Saturday Night Live legend, Leon Phelps. You guys know who Leon Phelps is, right? You totally know who Leon Phelps is. Anyway, here's Leon Phelps. You might know him more as the ladies' man. Oh, hey, Mr. G, how's it going? It's me, Leon Phelps, the ladies' man. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's a lady over there. Hey, lady. Leon, that's my wife. Yeah, she's taken. Well, I don't know about that. He just kind of winked at me over there. Now, I think she was just giving you like a nasty look or something. Yeah, she's giving you a nasty look, Leon. She's not interested. Oh, that's a shame. Just give me I'll work my charm on her. No, you ain't gonna work anything on her. Anywho, video 2. Consider our judicial system. Arrested people are innocent until proven guilty. Yet that's what I hear all the time whenever the police they come to my place. Um, I don't understand why they're there so often. Um, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so I might learn something from this. All right, yeah, hopefully, Leon. Let's see. We could say the null hypothesis is the defendant is innocent versus the alternate hypothesis, the defendant is guilty. Prosecutors must provide enough evidence against the defendant's innocence to the jury for them to reject the null hypothesis that they're innocent in favor of the alternate hypothesis that they're really guilty. Now, do juries ever make the wrong decision in a court case? I don't know, maybe so. The two types of mistakes that juries could make will be discussed in the next video. Hey, was that O.J. Simpson, Mr. G? It possibly was. Why? Why do you ask? Yeah, that dude, he is not cool. He killed his lady. You ain't supposed to kill. You're supposed to love your lady. That just, I can't believe him. For a jury to decide the defendant is guilty, there needs to be a certain level of evidence for them to make that conclusion. If not enough evidence is provided to prove guilt, then the jury will fail to reject the defendant's innocent. Now, this is a very important thing. A jury never finds the defendant innocent. They don't accept that he's innocent. They just weren't given enough evidence to prove that they were guilty. Okay, so we will never accept the null hypothesis. We will only fail to reject the null hypothesis. Okay, that is a very important thing there. We will fail to reject or reject the null hypothesis. You never accept the null hypothesis. Now, the amount of evidence needed to change the jury's mind from believing the defendant is innocent to guilty will be referred to as the significance level or alpha level. Now, I know this kind of looks like a fancy cursive looking A here, lowercase a, but really we're talking about the Greek letter alpha, the lowercase Greek letter alpha, which kind of looks more like this. Kind of looks more maybe like the Jesus fish, if you will. So I might write alpha levels 0.05, maybe it'll be 0.01 in some cases. So yes, we will be using the Jesus fish basically. The value is directly tied to the confidence interval from last chapter. For example, if we talk about a 5% alpha level, really we could also be talking about, and we will later this chapter, how that's connected to a 95% confidence interval. So these two numbers are basically complements of each other up to 100%. A 99% confidence interval is tied into a 1% alpha level. And our common alpha levels will be 1, 5, 10%, but I would say the most common will be 5%. The significance or alpha value must be selected before doing any kind of statistical work. Basically, it's cheating if you don't otherwise. In terms of a pole vaulter, if you know how high you can jump already, let's say you know that you can clear 10 feet very easily, then you can set the bar low enough so that you will always be able to jump over it. It's not really fair. Okay? Now, if you set the bar first before you know how high you can jump, let's say you've never pole vaulted before and you have no idea how far you're really going to be able to go over the bar, then you may or may not clear the jump. So this last scenario, when you don't know beforehand, is what we wish to do statistically. We want to be fair about everything. The total evidence provided to the jury can be thought of as the p-value. Okay? Now, either the p-value is going to be it's going to be enough that the jury will say, "Yep, that p-value, there's enough evidence in here that we will, say the defendant is guilty." Or on the other hand, the jury might say, we feel like we weren't given enough p-value, enough evidence to conclude that the defendant was guilty. So we have to fail to reject his guilt and go with innocence for now. The definition of a p-value is this. It is the probability computed assuming the null hypothesis is true. And we don't necessarily know if the null hypothesis is true, but it's what we're going to start the problem out with. Okay, so we're going to assume it's true from the beginning. And if we think we can reject it later, then we will do so. So the probability that the statistic, and our statistic will be an x bar or a p hat, depending on what type of problem we do, would take a value as extreme or more extreme than the one actually observed is. Okay? So if the p-value, or the total evidence, assuming the defendant is innocent, is as extreme or more extreme than the significance or alpha level, and the alpha level again was that tipping point from the jury saying that, so far he's innocent, oh, there's enough evidence now we're going to say he's guilty. So that alpha level's the dividing line between, failing to reject and rejecting the null hypothesis. Now, we will reject the null hypothesis in favor of the alternate when the p-value is less than the alpha value. So if the p-value is less than the alpha value, we will say that our data is statistically significant at the alpha level, whether it's the 0.05 level, the 0.01 level. In that case, we will reject the null hypothesis, which is our h sub naught. Hey, that says ho. Well, it looks like it says ho, Leon, but really it says h sub naught. This is our null hypothesis in kind of statistical slang. And we may conclude that there is convincing evidence in favor of the alternate hypothesis. So in other words, and Leon, you might appreciate this, okay? If the p-value is too low, meaning that it's less than the alpha value, then what we're going to say is the hoe gotta go. Oh, when the hoes, when they don't make enough money, yeah, you just have to tell them to leave because, you have to eat and drink your Courvoisier because that stuff is just not cheap. You know? I I really don't, Leon. I have no idea. I'm sorry. But yes, if our p-value is too low, we must reject the null hypothesis. Now, Zach Holland, our golfer from our last video, he was wanting to try out a new 7-iron club. And he was hoping that this new 7-iron club would help decrease the variations in his shot to make his shots more precise and more accurate. Okay, that they consistently go about the same distance each time. Now, when he took his data and performed a significance test at the 5% alpha level, he calculated a p-value of 0.0224. Now, we haven't talked about yet how to calculate a p-value, and we will later. Okay? But let's just go with the assumption that Zach was smart enough to compute this on his own. Okay? So let's interpret what this p-value really means. So if the null hypothesis is true, and that was that his standard deviation would stay 15, and the 15 was based on his old 7-iron. Okay? So basically we're saying that nothing has changed from the old 7-iron to the new 7-iron. That if that is really true, then we would see a result as extreme or more extreme than what we saw, or what Zach saw, occur 2.24% of the time by chance alone. Now that 2.24%, that is our p-value. So that p-value is basically going to tell us how rare is it that what we saw would naturally happen. Okay, and we mentioned before that usually 5%. If something happens less than 5% of the time, then we would feel that something is wrong. And that's when we would say we would reject the null hypothesis. Now, in this chapter, it's not always going to be 5%. That 5% that we have always talked about before is kind of this standard alpha level. So sometimes dividing line might not be at the 5% level, it might be at the 1% level. And if something happens less than 1% of the time, and we saw it happen, then we're going to reject the null hypothesis in favor of the alternate. Do the data provide convincing evidence against the null hypothesis? Well, yeah, since our p-value is less than our alpha level of 0.05, we would reject the null hypothesis and conclude that the standard deviation length of all shots with his new 7-iron is less than 15 yards. Okay, that the new 7-iron is making his shots more consistent. Now, here is an example that's in your book, and if you got your book and you want to look at it, fine. If not, you may look over this. Here is the problem really down here at the bottom, and all of this is just kind of background information that leads you up to the problem. So if you want to read over this and look at the problem, you can pause the video now before I show you the answer on the next page. So pause. Here is the answer to both parts A and B. You can read over those, see if they make sense based on what we talked about in the video. Now there are two more problems I want you to try out, and these aren't mandatory. I'm not saying I'm going to take a homework grade on these. But if you want to get better at statistics, you need to practice. You're only going to get better with practice. So here is the first example that I want you to try on your own. And you can write this on a separate piece of paper. If you got any blank space on the margins of your notes, just something you can jot down real quick. So there's this problem that you can read over, pause it, and then here's the second video, or the second problem that I want you to take a look at. And again, we will go over both of these problems tomorrow in class, okay, so that you can check your answer. Even if you don't do it, we're still going to go over it. So you might as well take a look at it and see if you can even just mentally figure out what the answer is. All right. So again, Leon, thanks for being on the show. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Yeah. Where's that lady at again? That's my wife, and I think she said she was going to go lock herself in the bedroom until you left. Yeah, well, that makes me kind of sad, but I'm going to go find some other ladies. All right, Leon, well, thanks for coming by, and I hope you learned a lot. Yeah, I learned that if the skanks are just too skanky, you just got to get rid of them. Yeah, I don't think that's exactly the point I was trying to make. Um, can you say it more in statistical terms, Leon? Well, let me try again. You said if the p-value, it's kind of like the money they make. If the p-value is too low, then the whole got to go, right? You're going to reject the null hypothesis. Yes, that is correct, Leon. If the p-value is too low, if it's less than your alpha level, then we get to reject the null hypothesis. All right, yeah, I think I learned quite a bit there. All right, thank you, Mr. G. Hey, no problem, man. Hey, I'm just helping one dried up celebrity at a time, everybody. All right, until the next video, good night.